Good Friday morning to you. As I've been thinking about the end of this week and what next week looks like, I have found myself asking people over and over again, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? How are you holding up? I worry about where we are as a society with our mental health and just with our spiritual health. I know for myself, I feel weary from all that is happening. While I thrive on creativity, there gets to be a point where the constant moving target almost feels like too much. This morning I was thinking about all of this and reading out of the book of Philippians. Paul writes this letter to the church in Philippi, reminding them to be content in everything. He writes in chapter 4, verse 12, he says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or want. And then he writes these words that we paint on pictures and put on our walls. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Now, that's not separate from Paul's understanding of contentment. It's not separate from the reality that he had suffered and that there were times when he went hungry and there were times when he had more than enough. Paul writes that in tandem, they're deeply connected and woven together. Being content and knowing that we can do all things through him who gives us strength is part of and maybe the heart of what faith is all about. I've been thinking about this passage and really the whole final chapter of Philippians, the 4th chapter, because it's these words that we often read at Thanksgiving. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests known to God. I can do all things through the one who gives me strength. Now think about that. It's also worth mentioning that when Paul wrote this letter to Philippians, he states in the 1st chapter that he's imprisoned. Paul was frequently imprisoned for proclaiming the message of Christ, and yet he writes these words. We may feel a little bit like we are imprisoned. We might feel a little bit like we are held captive by a government or by a disease or maybe by our own conscience. Could we write these same words? Has our faith deepened and do we see God at work in such a profound way that we could say it's about being content, whether we are in plenty or want, whether things are working out the way we desired or they aren't? Can we also have the confidence and the assurance to say, as Paul writes, I can do all things through him who gives me strength? See, the reality is, as true as it was for Paul, it's true for you, and it's true for me. I know I need that reminder today, and I hope this short devotional is a great reminder for you as well. We need that. In fact, to me, that's why we are a community. To pick us up when we need it, to help us to stay strong when we need it, to celebrate together and rejoice together. I'm so honored that we have this time where we can share, even if it feels a little one-sided, although I know it's not, because Pastor Tom and I are constantly getting messages of how much these devotional times mean to you. And I hope you know that they mean the same to us. They are just as impactful for us to share this word with you as for you to say, hey, that word really meant a lot to me. I think that's exactly what Paul is speaking to. And so I'm going to read verse 12 for you one more time. Philippians 4, 12 and 13. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. If you're in plenty, that's awesome. And if you're in want, that's no less awesome, because God is in the midst of all of that. We can do all things through him who gives us strength. We can celebrate together, rejoice together, shed tears together, and even mourn together, because that's what it means to be a community centered on Christ. I hope you have a great week.